Hello, my friends. Happy Friday. Hope your week is coming to a nice, easy close with a beautiful, soft landing. We woke up this morning with some awful news. Shinzo Abe, the former prime minister out of Japan, was assassinated. It was shot and killed, shot in the back with a homemade firearm while he was delivering a speech. And my goodness, that was just horrible news. This is something that really rattles a lot of the world order when stuff like this happens. And the first instinct, of course, is to jump in and kind of get political on it, which always feels a little bit too soon because a man just was shot and killed. And it sounds like it was pretty bad, pretty gruesome. It was a homemade firearm. There are pictures of this thing floating around all over the internet, and it looks pretty sort of rudimentary, and stuff like that can be very very violent and very damaging. It's like not clean, right? It's rudimentary, so it kind of explodes, and it may not be treatable like a traditional gunshot wound, because it's not a traditional gunshot wound. It's sort of like a cannon, because it was sort of pipes that were connected together and duct taped together, or like sort of electrical taped together. I mean, it was a pretty gruesome looking device. But the point is, the prime minister was standing there speaking, and apparently this guy just came up right behind him and shot him in the back, and they took him to the hospital. And I was sort of last night poking around on Twitter trying to see if there were updates and whether we knew whether he died or not. And it turns out this morning we woke up and I found out that he is in fact deceased and no longer with us. So that is very tragic. And as I said, boom, as soon as something like that happens, we see an immediate conversation about the politics of the whole situation. And we'll jump into it. I mean, that's the reality of the world. First thing that we started to notice is, what do other world leaders say? This is somebody who's sort of, in their class. And even if you have political disagreements across the world, or across, different ideologies or different geographic regions, everybody kind of wants to play by the same rules, where their political leaders are not getting assassinated. And this can be shocking to them, because they may be sitting there wondering whether or not they're next. They don't want that sort of disorder. And so you expect all of them to rally around each other and kind of issue at least a blanket statement, something that's very easy to unpack. And we saw that immediately last night, or this morning. I saw a bunch of them. Boris Johnson, who just got his rear end handed to him over there in the UK, had a statement. We also saw that little dictator Trudeau had a statement. He came out, pretty quickly, forcefully on Twitter. Donald Trump had a statement. They were buddies. Shinzo Abe and Trump, they were sort of seen photographing in photographs and hanging around all over the place. So Trump came out with a statement, but people are wondering, where's Joe? Where's Joe Biden? Is he just sitting there staring at a typewriter, trying to piece all this together? Gosh, I need a good statement, or not, right? What is going on? Because there was no statement from them. And by the time you're watching this, maybe there is. But there was an article over at Red State which assembled all of these responses, and strangely missing was anything from the White House. CNN got a story, or got a source who said that the White House was, shocked and saddened. And you go, okay, so that's your statement? Brilliant, nice job. And the problem is they're trying to balance this out, right? Because Shinzo was somebody who was close with Trump. And so if they come out and they say something like, this is a tragic, terrible passing, they might alienate their base, because not everybody is upset about this. The Chinese are celebrating with this. I saw headlines that the Chinese censors are, on their Weibo and other platforms trying to limit this, trying to limit some of the celebratory comments that are taking place on their social media platforms. And, that is, of course, their right to celebrate, but we're talking about the politics and how this might play here at home. So you can see why the White House might want to delay this. Are we too forceful? Are we not forceful enough? And they're taking their sweet time to craft a statement. It might be out by the time we see this, but just all around, in general, a shocking thing to see happen. So, prayers to everybody there in Japan. I know he was a prime minister for quite some time. This is also raising questions about gun violence and gun laws. Japan is has some of the most toughest gun laws in the world, according to my understanding of what I was reading. And that is, their prerogative, but people are still going to be violent. People are still going to commit crimes. People are still going to break the law. People are still going to kill each other. And it may be at a lower degree or something, but this guy went and he strapped some pipes together and he put some stuff in there and he made a gun, and he killed somebody anyways with a gun. So, I think everybody will latch onto that and they'll try to politicize this, say, oh, see, there's no gun violence, and, there's less gun violence over there, and so we should do what Japan does, or the opposite of that. See, he got killed by a gun, and you have strict gun laws either way, but I think it's just people trying to capitalize on a political movement, talking about gun violence, missing the underlying foundational reason why we talk about guns in the first place, which is personal liberty and the right of self-defense, and all of these things. And sometimes the debate gets missed on that a little bit. It's like the gun debate shifts over to the reason we're talking about guns is because of societal protection, as though that overemphasizes, that takes emphasis over self-defense. So we have to optimize our laws for public safety rather than optimizing our laws for self-defense. So the gun control debate will go on forever, I'm sure. Fortunately for us, the Supreme Court has made that latter concept of the right to self-defense foundational, saying that's a higher priority, in other words, than some of these other concerns about regulating guns and firearms in different locations. But I think it is a good example, right? You can have a country where guns are basically non-existent. People are still going to die from guns, including the prime minister. Okay, the prime minister, arguably, or the former prime minister at the time, arguably one of the most protected people in the entire country, right? So we'll continue to watch this story. Also watching a lot of the media reaction to this. So we've got political reaction, we've got media reaction. And there were a lot of stories there are a lot of people who are doing the old compare and contrast. Let's see how, for example, the AP reacts when Fidel Castro dies. What do their headlines look like? And it's like, visionary leader dies after decades struggle for equality, right? Whatever. At age 90. Okay. Then you go down to, Venezuela. And when he dies, it's like, oh, you know, climactic end to a life of service for his people. Okay. Got it. But when Shinzo dies, it's like ultra MAGA nationalists leaves divided legacy. You know, and you go, what? Well, that sounds a little bit different. Has a little bit of a different flavor to it than some of those other headlines. And you know, you see a lot of it. There was a Red Steez he's on Twitter is his handle. He had a retweet of one of those today, doing a compare and contrast. And NPR was even out there. NPR came out and they posted a tweet about that, like ultra MAGA nationalist. I don't think they said MAGA, but ultra nationalist. Shinzo is dead, and you know, there are ramifications to this. And is this a sign of a changing downward spiral in the world? And so on and so forth. But we'll have to continue to see how the story develops, and you know, whether this causes any realignments or any shifts. Nobody knows what this guy's motive was, or as far as I saw, not yet at least. You know, some of it saying that he was just a frustrated, I think, a Navy vet. So we're trying to unpack a little bit more of that, but it's just terrible, you know. It's just terrible. Anytime somebody is killed unnecessarily, it's a terrible thing. And when it's a person who sort of symbolizes, you know, a movement, you're gonna have a lot of heartbroken people and a lot of angst about the future of that country, and about, you know, if there's any collateral consequences of this that might, you know, derail a movement or derail causes. And so it can lead to some, you know, some significant turmoil. I mean, you look around, you can say, yeah, maybe it leads to world wars. You know, it's not good. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on that, but it's basically going to be the big story of the day, right? I don't think there's anything else that's even remotely close in terms of significance that is going on. Back here at home yesterday, we left off on the Raskin, Schiff, Cheney garbage committee. And this morning I saw Adam Raskin, clip of him. He was out talking with somebody on some stage, you know, sitting in the chairs, conversing intellectually with one another. And he was essentially picking up the ball that was dropped by the rest of the committee, Elizabeth Warren and many others, all making the arguments that the Supreme Court is basically illegitimate now. And like openly saying that. Like illegitimate. Raskin in this clip was saying something to the effect of, you know, they were created to interpret the Constitution. They are not interpreting the Constitution anymore. And basically they're no longer serving their function. You know, in other words, what do we need the Supreme Court for? Sort of where he was going with this. Saying they're no longer fulfilling their constitutional legitimacy. And that begs the question, well, so what? What happens next? Now, they're running out of time on this. You know, they don't have the votes to pack the court. They don't have the votes to do much of anything. So they're talking a lot and sort of screeching, because often that will produce results. Or at least it will encourage their primary supporters, their base, to say, hey, they're fighting for me. They're doing something meaningful. Look how angry Raskin is. Look how angry Elizabeth Warren is. And they're going to raise a lot of money off this. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned it, but I actually got, for some reason, I get some Democratic fundraising texts. I'm on a list. And I haven't pressed stop yet or unsubscribe or anything, because it's like, oh, okay, well, let's just see what they're sending. Okay, let's send me a message. Let me see. And so they sent me one. I forget who it's from. It's like, you know, ACT, USA Blue, Ultra Lib, MAGA, whatever. And it was an abortion fundraising thing. I was like, what are you talking about? Like the whole email or the whole text and the page that they referred me to so that I could donate $100 or whatever. All nonsense. I'm like, you're not going to be able to do any of that because the Supreme Court said so. So you can try, I guess. In fact, they are trying. So Joe Biden apparently is coming out and he's going to issue an executive order. This executive order is, I think, going to be pretty basic, pretty rudimentary as well. It's going to be a demand from Health and Human Services. Xavier Becerra is going to basically order all of the federal agencies to prepare a report about what they can do to protect reproductive freedom in the United States. And this will be like a big book report that the bureaucrats are very good at doing, by thousands of pages, probably cost a couple $1,000,000, and it'll just sit there and probably not result in anything meaningful, but it'll kind of sound good, except it really doesn't sound good. Many people on the left are very upset about this. I mean, they knew this opinion was coming for quite some time because it leaked. Remember that? We talked about it. So shouldn't all of this have been ready to go? I mean, it's like you're preparing for the big day when Roe was overturned. Shouldn't you have your executive orders, your plan, your abortion TPs on federal lands, whatever they're doing? You'd say, okay, there it is. Bah, 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 bah. You'd have Joe Biden come out. I know it's a terrible day, but here's what we're going to do. Here's the plan for America. We're going to re-elect a bunch of Democrats, and we're going to pack the court, and we're going to have a whole plan in place. And the Democrats would have been happy about that, but they didn't have anything even remotely close. I mean, they were just sitting around there bumbling, as they usually are, just like they were doing with Shinzo's response. And so they have completely botched this thing. And people are pissed about it. Their party is pissed about it. And as we can see from a lot of the recent shift in some of the media coverage, they're making that known. There's sort of more and more, we don't cover a lot of the media, but there are a lot of other people who do. We play clips from the media, but there are people out there, their show is like, let's just point out the hypocrisies of the media. And they just spend all day just, oh, look at these liars. Oh, look at these liars. And you're starting to see the media shift. Like there was a clip. Well, what's been funny is there's been more and more clips from CNN and other places that are sort of like sharing the bad news. We've played a couple of them on the show. People are asking, even the reporters, isn't this J6 committee having any effect? And the reporters are like, no. Like, oh, like none at all? Like, no, none. Zero. I'm like, well, that's pretty bad news. They're like, yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's bad. It's terrible news. It's not good for us. Okay, well, they're openly acknowledging it. The J6 is garbage and the Biden people are garbage. Like they must have really lost the narrative. They lost the plot big time. And it's been fun to sort of watch that. But, this has them angry, and I think rightfully so, because they want more from their political party, and they're just not delivering. Okay, which way are we going to go? Let's go this way. So the point of the Raskin story is that, this is continuing to heat up. In fact, they're not letting up on any of this sort of abortion protesting of the judges. So Judge Kavanaugh was out at Morton's Steakhouse, and he got sort of eschewed out of the building. He had to go out the back door. He had to go get the manager, and the manager had to say, hey, let's go out this way, because there were protesters in there who were literally demanding that they don't serve him and that they throw him out of the restaurant. And this is a judge, right? So they've communicated that type of conduct is basically okay. Police have been standing outside the judges' homes watching protesters out there And they were there to try to influence an opinion of the judge. And that's a violation of US code, right? But nobody at the DOJ is prosecuting those. That's not an insurrection. That's not interfering with democracy. That's all perfectly okay. They're allowed to do that. Meanwhile, the J6 insurrectionists are, sitting in solitary confinement, being prosecuted, sent to prison for 1,800 years. It's ridiculous. But it's going to continue. It's pretty embarrassing that the Biden people are, sort of watching this from a political perspective, but it's spelling the doom of their political party, really. And I think they're seeing it. There was a very interesting interview with Tucker Carlson and some New York Times journalists, speaking of the media. It was about 10 minutes. I think it's longer than that, but I watched the 10-minute clip on Twitter. Viva actually shared it. And it's very good. Now, I saw in the Twitter comments thread that some people were saying that the journalists, got the upper hand on Tucker. I didn't see that at all, right? Now, I happen to think Tucker's a pretty capable individual. And if I had to pick, I'm on Team Tucker on this one, okay? So maybe I'm a little bit biased. But I thought that it was a very instructive interview. When I watch these interviews and I watch, for example, Tucker doesn't normally do interviews. He's sort of a quiet media type. He does the interviewing. Did you see that guy? I think he was jogging with his kid in the stroller, which was like pretty impressive. He was going fast, like it wasn't like a slow jog. That guy was like moving. So my Tucker story, of course, is there aren't a lot of opportunities to listen to him be in the guest chair, right, and have somebody else drive the bus a little bit. He's always the driver. He's got the clock. He says, we're going to commercial, right? He's the alpha male in the alpha situation. And so I was watching this interview where he was the guest, and I was thinking, oh, wow, this is interesting. So I don't normally see this. Let's see how his demeanor changes. And I like to watch these interviews because there's sort of a formula to them, right? And I'm not the best interviewer or the interviewee. I'd like to practice more and get a little bit better at it. But, there's a formula to it. And when you see, it almost resembles the law. The law has it's very formulaic. You've got opening arguments, closing arguments. There's sort of scripts and templates and strategies and, theories on how to structure your openings and your closings and how your cross-examinations and your direct exams, the whole deal. So an interview can be very much, the same way. You got a formula, you just follow it. And, I like to see how people assemble their houses. It's like a Lincoln logs or Legos, bless you. And they're assembling it all together. And I just like to watch how they're built and how people will deconstruct those houses simultaneously. So Tucker Carlson was doing that. Now this guy came out and it was a wild interview. It's weird to watch. It's weird to watch how people can think this way. But this guy comes out and he says, hey Tucker, you've been labeled a white supremacist and a bigot and a xenophobe and all of these horrible things, but today I don't want to talk about labels and I'd like to ask you, why are you a white supremacist? And you go, what kind of question is that? And then Tucker starts to answer it and this guy cuts him off and cuts him off and cuts him off and cuts him off. And then Tucker, gets back into it and he starts to explain essentially, listen, I'm on the show and the guy plays literally a 3-second clip of him. It might be longer than that, might be shorter than that. I don't know. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. It's probably about that long, maybe longer. I don't know. But it's totally out of context. And he's trying to clobber Tucker with this. And Tucker's like, okay, play it, all right, just play it and whatever. So he does. And Tucker says, listen, I'm on the show live every night for a full hour. And he says, if you want to know how I feel and what I think, well, you can just hop on the show and watch it. And this is the same sort of defense that Joe Rogan has when people were saying you're a racist and you're a bigot and Joe Rogan should be canceled and he's a Trump MAGA maniac and all this stuff. Well, the issue is that the people who know them, the people who know Tucker, the people who know Rogan, the people who tune in every night, the people who get to see how he acts and how he treats people, how he treats his guests. And when Tucker even gets into spats with other people like Dinesh D'Souza, right, who's sort of on his same side, Dinesh, when they resolve those disputes, comes out and says, you know, Tucker's a pretty stand-up dude. He called, we worked it out, or whatever. Right? So people get to know a person's character. And so when you get these New York Times morons who come up there and they say, tell me why you're a white supremacist, right? It's the same sort of analogy. It's like, when did you stop beating your wife? Or, you know, it's those questions. It's like a gotcha. Either way you answer it. You know, have you stopped beating your wife? I think is how that question goes. And if you say yes, then you acknowledge that you stopped beating your wife. And if you say no, you've acknowledged that you're continuing to beat your wife. So it's like Tucker, you know, it's really, really inappropriate, but it's been very useful for so long, right? This was the strategy for years. It was just call everybody a bigot, call everybody a racist, make everybody feel like they've got to change their language and play by our set of rules. And when you start to see people just not doing that anymore, like, nah, look, I'm gonna make jokes about abortion, I'm gonna make jokes about women or men or whatever, right? And I'm just gonna have fun. And Tucker, he was kind of laughing and having fun throughout this interview, and this guy was getting super rattled up. And I thought it was quite good. Tucker was also interesting. He said, you know, I like to listen to these people to see how they keep their heads straight, okay, to be honest, because it's sort of a lot, right? Even, you know, to be engaged at the level that Tucker is every night, right? To see him sort of, and it's not just Tucker, it's really anybody in this space, you know, whether it's a liberal or a conservative or whatever. But you got to understand, you know, he has the #1 show for quite some time, and it's for a reason. His performance is quite good, and he's a machine. And I've told you I've got limited experience with some of this stuff, with having conversations with Megyn Kelly, and I know how she works, and Tucker's that class, right? And it's really impressive. So for him to be able to sort of live a life where he can dive into the politics and come out and like start throwing elbows at everybody and, you know, fire it up and, you know, get emotionally invested in these things, but then to go home, and he said in this interview, he says, I've got an unusually happy family. He's like, my life is great. You know, I feel very blessed. I feel very fortunate, because somebody asked him, like, oh, you're a white guy, do you ever feel like you were oppressed? And he said, no, in fact, I feel very blessed. I feel very fortunate for all the things that I have. And, you know, I have an unusually happy family. He says, I don't even really go on the internet. He said that. I don't even really go on the internet. So I don't even know what you're talking about. You know, and it's just so funny to see the two totally different worlds that these people are living in. Like, it's two totally different worlds. Like, one guy is like living in this world where language and, you know, the things you say. Tucker said something about replacement theory, and this guy played this clip, and he was just like, you know, I mean, it hurt me. And do you think about how that feels for other people? And it's like the empathy of this guy, right? He's sort of taking in the world's pain, even when it's not even been demonstrated that it's there. He's like, Tucker said something that might have offended other people, and I'm hurt by that. And Tucker's like, I say what I want, I believe it. He sort of, you know, layers the whole thing in a foundation of Christ and Christianity and about human value, right? So his mental framework for what he believes is as rock solid as anybody. You might disagree with it, but he can explain it. The guy asks him questions, and here's why I don't think that other races have more value than other races, and here's my foundational framework for all of this. And the guy just can't understand it. So then he says, yeah, you know, I've got a great life. I've got a great family, unusually happy. I don't even get on the internet, but this is what I believe, and this is what I stand for. This other guy's just, because you have no power over him. Do you see how painful that is? You have no power here. Call me whatever you want. Call me a racist, call me a bigot, call me a whatever. I don't care. Love my wife, love my kids. I don't even get on the internet. So say whatever you want. Say whatever you want. It doesn't even matter to me. I'm not even going to see it. But what I am going to do is continue to do my show every night live, and it's going to get 3 million people a night. Every stinking night, like clockwork, because he's speaking the truth. So it just felt like, if you've ever done martial arts, or if you've ever done something where you are at a higher class of skill set than somebody else, it felt like that. Like, I did some mixed martial arts in college, and there were times when I would be with somebody, and it would be like me having to, to sort of be that gentle older brother. And there's other situations where somebody's being that nice, gentle older brother to me. And, it felt like that, almost like Tucker. Like Tucker was sort of, he was clearly outclassing this guy. And at least that was my take on it. I'd be curious to see what you have to say about it. But it was a very good interview. Viva, I think, tweeted it. There's a longer version and shorter versions. I'd watch the longer version because you get a real feel for this guy and what he thinks is a powerful argumentative tool. And it's not that good. And I think it got shown for what it is. Today, we've got Pat Cipollone is going to be interviewed by the January 6th committee. Later, I don't know if we're going to see any news about that or anything, but I think most of the news is going to be about the tragedy in Japan. And there were some new economic numbers out, which, it's hard to trust anything these days, but apparently jobs are up, which is not the reality that I'm experiencing around our economic environment. But what can you say, right? They're the people who write the numbers. They're the ones in charge of the reports. And so we just let them tell us what's happening while we actually live in reality and deal with it. Today I've got some coaching calls. Actually, I got a coaching call here bright and early this morning. And then I've got a big business meeting with my business partner later this afternoon. We're going to hash through a bunch of stuff that I'm super excited about. Sort of moving some pieces around to make sure that everybody is in sync with their unique ability. So that people are doing activities that are rewarding to them and fulfilling to them, useful to our clients, useful to our mission in improving our justice system and delivering maximum freedom to maximum people, delivering our value of safety, clarity, and hope. We want to make sure that the team are in the right seats and play in the right positions. So we're having sort of iterative conversations about a lot of this. So we're going to be sort of, Fridays can be a little bit slower in the courts. Fridays can be a little bit slower with sort of inquiries from people. Mondays are usually busy, so we can sort of set up some time on Fridays to do some of the brainstorming and some of the deep thinking. We're going to do that today. So my point is, depending on what happens with that, I may not be able to get a live show in tonight. I may do some recorded videos, which are a little bit shorter. We'll see. I'll have to kind of see how the day unfolds. But, well, there will be news to cover. When there is, we'll continue to do so. I'll keep you posted later today if there is going to be a live or not, or if it's going to be pre-recorded. But I will let you guys know. Going to wish you an amazing rest of your day. Hopefully your Friday is going beautifully. Maybe you're done already. I mean, maybe by the time you're watching this, you're like, Rob, it's cocktail time, baby. I don't know. Could be. But whatever you're doing, I hope you're having an amazing day, because it is an amazing day. I'll see you guys later. Bye.